Hi, everybody, and welcome to TAD Talks with ADDA. I'm Elaine Taylor-Klaus, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of ImpactADHD.com, an online resource for parenting kids with complex issues like ADHD and anxiety and all kinds of related stuff that comes with it. And I want to spend a little time today talking with you about executive function, because executive function is one of those terms that I was introduced to early on as I started understanding these issues around my complex kids, and was quite surprised to figure out that I had no idea what they were talking about, but there were all these people talking to me assuming I knew what I was talking about or what they were talking about in terms of executive function. And I think it's one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot in the ADHD world, but I didn't really know what it meant. And Diane and I had a very similar experience around this, and so we've done a lot of work in the last few years trying to break it down and simplify this notion of executive function to help parents and adults with ADHD understand these issues. Because when you have ADHD, you tend to struggle with one of five areas, right? You tend to be struggling with regulation issues around attention, organization, impulsivity, emotional management or emotionality, and sometimes hyperactivity. Sometimes it's physical hyperactivity, sometimes it's hyperactivity in the brain. And those five areas are all difficult for those of us with ADHD to self-regulate or to manage, or in some areas. And all of those actually take place in what's known as the executive function of the brain. The frontal lobe of the brain is where we think and reason and plan and coordinate and all of those sort of upper level thinking skills. And in those of us with ADHD, a lot of times our executive function skills are either lagging behind or they're just not as well developed as with our typical friends, or when we're talking about our kids with their neurotypical peers. And so there's been a lot of research done on executive function. There are many people now who believe that ADHD actually should be classified as a disorder of executive function and not about attention. We're not going to get into the politics of it. But there are 6 areas of executive function that tend to be impacted in people with ADHD. Not everybody with ADHD has all 6. Some of us have 1 or 2 or 3, and some people do have all 6. Those are people with pretty severe impact from ADHD. And so what I want to do is just sort of walk you through these 6 areas. I'm actually going to share my screen so you can see them, because I know I'm visual and it will help me to see it. I know it'll probably help a lot of you. So the 6 areas, there's a lot of research that's been done by Dr. Tom Brown about these 6 areas of what he calls the ADHD syndrome. And these are the places that we need to focus on and understand what's going on with our brain so we can learn to manage our challenges differently. So the first one is what we call activation or task management. The other thing I'll say is that we've taken the concepts from Dr. Brown, and then we've taken some of the language that Dr. Mark Burton uses that we think explains it really well and sort of merged them here. So activation or task management, action management, memory or information management, focus or attention management, emotion management, and effort management. Those are the 6 areas of ADHD that tend to be impacted for those of us dealing with a condition, but not all necessarily. Now, let's break it down. So what is task management or activation? That tends to be about planning or prioritizing, organizing, sequencing. Time management falls into this category. Procrastination falls into this category. Those of us who have trouble getting started, getting engaged, getting activated, tend to struggle with the task management or the activation challenges of ADHD. Okay, so the next one you see here is action management. And that's that physical, in the body kind of thing, right? Hyperactivity, fidgeting, monitoring, self-monitoring your own behavior. Impulsivity can show up here because we sometimes we hesitate or don't hesitate before we act. Motor coordination comes here. A kid who doesn't put stuff away from their backpack, right? Your backpack is full of papers all over because they don't want to take out the notebook, open the notebook, put the paper in, close the notebook, and put it back. That's a challenge with motor coordination. Handwriting can show up. A lot of people with ADHD have abysmally difficult handwriting because this action management piece can be really overwhelming. Okay. Next is information management. Also shows up as memory issues. So working memory, holding information in your head. recall, being forgetful. When you're a kid at school holding information, math problems or writing, what was I going to write about? What was I going to say? Those can all be memory-related issues. At home, it may be walking into a room and not remembering what you came in here for, and then going back, or sending your kids off to go get a pair of socks and they come back with Legos, right? That's because the working memory didn't hold the information long enough for them to remember. And this is also why people with ADHD struggle with learning from their mistakes and organizing ideas, because they sort of can't remember what's happened, or they remember that it had happened, but they don't remember when. Okay. Next one is this is the classic one, attention or focus issues, attention management or focus. This is what most people think of when they think of what is ADHD, right? But even attention is not as simple as are they paying attention or not, right? So managing your attention and your focus is about shifting attention, knowing when to focus and when not to, knowing what to focus on, hyperfocus, being distractible, staying on task. All of these things are different ways that we need to manage our attention in order to be able to focus effectively. So for some kids in school, it may be, staring out the window, and for other kids, they may be listening, but they may not know which information is important. So that's a focus issue. 2 more left. Emotion management. Interesting, 10 years ago, we didn't even know that emotion was really a critical component of ADHD, and now we realize it's part of everything, and it impacts all aspects of ADHD. So emotion management is about regulating outbursts and frustration tolerance, intense emotions, a lot of oppositional behaviors are kids who struggle with this area, reactive, defensiveness. We get a lot of defensiveness and defensive dishonestry in our community. That shutting down, just getting overwhelmed. All of these are, not having a sophisticated way yet to be able to manage the emotional intensity. I often say that when we have ADHD, a lot of people who struggle with this area of ADHD, they live on the edge. Everybody else is in the middle of the bowl, and we're on the edges, on the rims. Everything is intense. The highs are high and the lows are lower, and we have to learn to manage that. So when a kid gets knocked by a backpack, some kids will be like nothing, and other kids will be way overreacting because they haven't learned to emotionally manage that or regulate that. And then the last one, this is one I find that is often misunderstood. We call it effort management or energy regulation. A lot of people with ADHD have a hard time maintaining their energy, this alertness. And so as long as something is active and engaged and interesting or compelling to them, they're there. And as soon as it gets a little bit boring, it's like their activation drops and they just can't stay awake, right? A lot of us experience that at 2 or 3 in the afternoon after lunch. People with ADHD experience this often throughout the day in sort of cyclical ways. So managing your effort, managing your energy, and your alertness can be a big part of adult management for ADHD. That means getting projects finished shows up here. Decision making can show up here. A lot of paralysis of I don't know what to do, and so I'm going to do nothing. And processing speed shows up here too. That how do I get my brain to move fast enough to stay engaged with the material? So this is where a lot of kids or adults who look unmotivated show up in this area of effort or energy management. So those are the 6 aspects of executive function that are most critically impacted in ADHD. And that chart that you just saw is one that we teach in our Sanity School program because it's so essential to understand ADHD so that you can to understand executive function so that you can begin to learn to manage the way that it shows up for you and your ADHD. So that's it. That's today's TAD Talk about executive function. Again, my name is Elaine Taylor-Klaus. I'm the CEO of ImpactADHD, an online resource for parenting complex kids. And it's been great being with you today. If you want more information about me or my work with parents of kids or teachers of kids, you can find us online at ImpactADHD.com. And that is all. Take care, everyone. Bye.